The mission had gone sideways in the worst possible way. What should have been a simple extraction turned into a firefight that left half our team in the medical bay and our best warrior bleeding through cracked armor plating. I'd never seen Kira hurt before. In 3 years of working together, she'd been untouchable, a force of nature wrapped in composite steel. But tonight, plasma fire had caught her shoulder, and the armor had taken damage it couldn't self-repair. "Let me help," I said, finding her alone in the armory after midnight. She looked at me with those storm-gray eyes that had stared down warlords, considering. Then she nodded once, turning to give me access to the shoulder mount. My hand shook as I worked the release mechanisms. Not from fear, from proximity. Kira and I had maintained professional distance despite the electricity that crackled between us whenever we were alone. She was my superior officer. I was the communications specialist who joined her unit fresh out of academy. The gap between us felt insurmountable. The damaged plate came free with a hiss of released pressure seals. I set it aside, reaching for the replacement, when I noticed something that made my breath catch. There, carved into the inner surface of the armor, the part that rested directly against her heart, was my name, Jackson. Not scratched casually, not etched as an afterthought. The letters were deep, deliberate, carved with precision and care. How many hours had she spent working them into the hardened composite? How long had she been wearing my name into battle? "Kira." My voice came out strangled. Her whole body went rigid. For a moment, the deadliest warrior in the sector looked terrified. "Why is my name carved inside your armor?" The silence stretched between us like a chasm. She still wouldn't look at me, this woman who'd faced down entire battalions without flinching. "It's a tradition," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "From my homeworld." I waited, my heart hammering against my ribs. "We carve the name of the person who gives us a reason to come home." The armory suddenly felt too small, the air too thin. I thought back to 2 years ago, after the disaster on Epsilon Station. I found her alone in the observation deck, staring out at the stars with eyes that looked like death. She'd lost her entire squad that day. Lost them because of orders she'd given, calls she'd made. I'd sat with her through the night, talked her back from the edge, reminded her that she was more than the sum of her missions, more than a weapon pointed at the enemy. "That was when?" I asked, though I already knew. "The morning after Epsilon," she confirmed. "I carved it before the next deployment. She'd been carrying me into battle ever since." Couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The armor plate felt heavy in my hands, weighted with meaning I was only beginning to comprehend. "Every mission?" I asked. Kira finally met my eyes, and what I saw there nearly undid me. Vulnerability, fear, hope, all warring beneath the surface of her legendary composure. "Every single one," she confirmed. 47 deployments. 47 times I've gone out knowing that if I wanted to see you again, I had to survive. My mind reeled through the past 2 years. All those missions where she'd taken impossible risks, yet somehow always made it back. The time she'd held a breach point alone for 20 minutes against overwhelming odds. The extraction on Nevera, where she'd walked through a kill zone to reach a downed pilot. The battle on Arcturus Station, where she'd been listed as Kia for 6 hours before stumbling back through the gates, half dead but alive. "I thought you were just..." I struggled for words. "Unstoppable. Lucky. I don't know. Motivated," she corrected softly. "I had something worth surviving for." She stepped closer, and I could see the scars that armor had hidden, a network of old wounds across her shoulders, her collarbone. Each one a story. Each one survived with my name pressed against her heart. "Why didn't you tell me?" The question came out rougher than I intended. What would I have said, Jackson? For the first time, I heard frustration in her voice. "You're young, brilliant, you have your whole career ahead of you. I'm a soldier. Violence is all I know. All I'm good for." "That's not true, isn't it?" She turned away, her jaw tight. "You saved me that night because you saw something human in me. Something worth preserving. But you see people's best selves, Jackson. You always have. What happens when you look at me long enough to see the rest?" I set down the armor carefully, deliberately. Then I closed the distance between us until I could feel the heat radiating from her skin, see the rapid pulse at her throat. "I've had 2 years to see everything, Kira. Do you think I haven't noticed? Haven't watched you train recruits with patience you show no one else? Haven't seen you use your body as a shield for younger soldiers? Haven't realized that the reason you're so good at violence is because you dedicated yourself to protecting people who can't protect themselves? Her breath hitched. That night on Epsilon Station, you weren't broken because you didn't care. You were broken because you cared too much. And every day since, I've watched you carry that weight and keep going anyway. I reached up, my fingers trembling as they brush her jawline. You want to know what I see when I look at you? What? The word barely made it past her lips. Everything I want. The kiss happened like gravity, inevitable, irresistible, pulling us together with a force neither of us could fight anymore. Kira's hands found my waist, and I felt the tremor in them. This warrior who never shook in battle was trembling against me. The vulnerability of it shattered something in my chest. I poured 2 years of longing into that kiss. Every moment I'd spent watching her from across a room, every time I'd imagined what this would feel like. She tasted like desperation and relief, her mouth urgent against mine. When we finally broke apart, both gasping, her forehead rested against mine. Jackson, she breathed, and my name had never sounded like that before. Like a prayer, like salvation. If we do this, if we cross this line, I crossed it 2 years ago. I admit it. I've just been waiting for you to catch up. A sound escaped her, half laugh, half sob. Then she was kissing me again, deeper this time, her control slipping. Her hand slid up my back, mapping territory they'd clearly dreamed about, and I lost myself in the sensation of finally being touched by her. We stumbled backward until my spine hit the wall. Kira's body pressed against mine, all hard muscle and lethal grace, and I've never felt safer in my life. Her lips traced down my jaw, my neck, finding the sensitive spot below my ear that made me gasp. I've thought about this, she murmured against my skin. So many times. In the field, when I should have been focusing on the mission. In my quarters alone. Every time you smiled at me, every time you said my name, her honesty undid me. I tangled my fingers in her short dark hair, pulling her back up to kiss me properly. Show me, I demanded. Show me what you've been thinking about. The predatory smile that crossed her face made heat pool low in my stomach. Here? In the armory. I don't care where. I just need. My words cut off as her thigh pressed between my legs, deliberate and perfect. Kira, I've got you, she promised, and I knew she meant it in every way possible. I've always got you. Her hands worked in my uniform with surprising gentleness, reverent despite the urgency. Every brush of her fingers against newly exposed skin felt like worship. When I reached for her bodysuit, she helped me, and I finally got to see what armor had hidden, scars and strength and stunning beauty. Beautiful, I whispered, tracing the line of a scar across her ribs. You're beautiful, Kira. She caught my hand, pressing it against a racing heart. That's yours, she said simply. Has been for 2 years. I just didn't have the courage to tell you. Then let me show you, I said, pulling her closer. Let me show you what you mean to me. We didn't make it to quarters that night. The armory became our sanctuary, a space where the decorated warrior and the communications specialist could shed their roles and simply be two people who needed each other desperately. Afterward, we lay tangled together on our discarded uniforms, Kira's fingers tracing idle patterns on my chest while my hand ran through her hair. The scarred armor plate with my name rested nearby, a reminder of what had led us here. Tell me about your homeworld, I said softly. About the tradition. Kira was quiet for a moment, her breath warm against my shoulder. It's a harsh place. Military culture runs deep. Everyone fights. Everyone serves. But we're not without heart. The naming tradition, it started centuries ago, during the border wars. Her fingers stilled against my skin. Warriors would carve names of their families, their children, their lovers. Something to hold on to when death was circling. A reminder that somewhere, someone was waiting for them to come home. And you chose me. I chose you, she confirmed. Not because I thought you'd wait for me romantically. I never expected this, Jackson. Never let myself hope. But because knowing you existed in the universe gave me a reason to keep existing too. I pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. I would have waited. If I'd known, I would have been waiting all along. I know that now. She propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at me with an expression so tender it made my throat tight. You're the most loyal person I've ever met. It's one of the 1,000 things I love about you. The casual way she said it, love, made my heart stutter. Love. A faint smile touched her lips. Did you think this was just attraction? Just need? She shook her head. Jackson, I've been in love with you since the day you sat with me on Epsilon Station and treated me like a person instead of a weapon. Every deployment since has just made it worse. Better, I corrected, cupping her face. Made it better. And for the record, I love you too. Half for longer than I can pinpoint exactly. The kiss she gave me then was different from the desperate ones earlier, slower, deeper, weighted with promise. When we finally parted, her eyes were bright. What do we do now? She asked. Fraternization regulations will work themselves out. I interrupted firmly. I'm not giving this up. Not giving you up. We'll request a transfer if we have to, follow protocol, whatever it takes. But Kira, I've spent 2 years pretending I didn't want you. I'm done pretending. She smiled then, genuinely smiled, and I realized I'd never seen her look truly happy before. Okay, she said simply. Okay. We stayed there until dawn, learning each other's bodies and hearts, making whispered promises in the quiet dark. 3 months later, I stood in the hangar bay, watching the transport ships return from the Outer Rim campaign. Regulations had been navigated. I transferred to Tactical Command, putting us on equal footing. Command had raised eyebrows, but approved it. Apparently, our combat effectiveness ratings spoke for themselves. But none of that mattered as I watched Kira's ship touch down. She was the first one off, still in full combat gear, and her eyes found mine immediately across the crowded hangar. The smile that broke across her face was private, meant only for me, and worth every second of the agonizing 2 weeks she'd been gone. I met her halfway, not caring who was watching as I pulled her into my arms. She held me just as tightly, her face buried against my neck. Welcome home, I whispered. Always, she murmured back. Always coming home to you. That night, in the quarters we'd been approved to share, I watched her remove her armor piece by piece. And there, beneath the shoulder plate, my name still remained, carved deep and permanent. You kept it, I said, touching the engraved letters gently. Always will. She caught my hand, pressing it against her chest where her heart beat strong and steady. But now I don't just carry your name into battle. I carry the knowledge that you'll be here when I return. That this, she gestured between us, is real and waiting, makes a difference, makes all the difference. She pulled me close, her lips finding mine in a kiss that tasted like homecoming. I'm not just surviving anymore, Jackson. I'm living. Because of you. I showed her then, with hands and mouth and whispered words, exactly how much she meant to me. How her strength didn't intimidate me, but inspired me. How her scars were beautiful because they told the story of everything she'd overcome. How loving her was the easiest and best thing I'd ever done. Later, wrapped around each other in the darkness, Kira's fingers traced patterns on my skin that felt like their own language. I used to think I was only good for war, she said quietly. That violence was my only fluency. But you taught me a different language. What language is that? Coming home, she said simply. You taught me that being a warrior doesn't mean I can't also be someone who loves, who's loved, who has something worth surviving for beyond the next mission. I kissed her shoulder, her neck, her jaw. You're so much more than what you can destroy, Kira. You always have been. I know that now, she whispered. Because you see me. Really see me. I do, I promised. And I always will. Outside, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns. But inside, we found our own constellation. 2 hearts that had finally found their way home to each other. Then,